Welcome to the Cognitive Crucible, produced by the Information Professionals Association. Our website is information-professionals.org, where you can find links and information about today's conversation and get access to members-only content. Join John Bicknell and explore all aspects of our generational challenge, cognitive security. The Cognitive Crucible is a forum that presents different perspectives and emerging thought leadership related to the information environment. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of or endorsement by the Information Professionals Association.
We have two guests today on the Cognitive Crucible, Courtney Cano and Kaitlyn Tierney, who are graduate students at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. Courtney and Kaitlyn's studies are focused on international policy and development, specializing in terrorism studies and data analytics. Courtney and Kaitlyn, welcome to the Cognitive Crucible.
Hey, John. Happy to be here.
All right. The conversation that I'd like to have with both of you today, Kaitlyn and Courtney, will cover your recent and ongoing project called Diverting Hate. But before we get into that, could one of you talk a little bit more about your program of study and what it emphasizes, and some of the coursework that you're taking?
Sure. So Kaitlyn and I are both Masters of Arts students at MMIS, as you mentioned, getting our Masters in International Policy and Development, which, as it seems, is quite broad. But Kaitlyn and I like to say that we have kind of melded some of the best things that MMIS has to offer. And while we are studying international policy and development, we are focusing and have focused on in our studies on terrorism studies and counterterrorism measures and extremism more broadly. So we've brought together the best of MMIS, whether it's the non-proliferation and terrorism studies program that they have and international policy.
Excellent. And you're using the acronym MMIS, right, for the Middlebury Institute of International Studies?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I just want to make sure that our audience is aware of that. Yeah, fantastic. So you guys recently won a contest. Could one of you tell us a little bit more about this contest?
Sure. So Kaitlyn and I were in a class this past fall called The Radical Right with our professor, Jason Blazakis, and there was about 13 of us in that class. And apart from it also being a class where we studied the radical right, generally speaking, we also participated in a competition called Invent to Prevent that was sponsored or is sponsored by the McCain Institute, the Department of Homeland Security, and Adventures. And so this program, broadly speaking, there was about 25 schools that competed in it over the course of the fall semester, and it very generally challenged students at these universities across the country to develop over the course of what ended up being about 10 weeks, our own sort of dynamic product or tool or initiative to quote unquote prevent targeted violence and terrorism. So quite a broad task that we had at us.
Excellent. And by the way, shout out to Mr. Tony Scrow, who introduced me to you two. And Tony was previously a podcast guest, and I'll have a link to his discussion in the show notes. But he's been intimately involved in Invent to Prevent. And the contest was also, I believe was sponsored by the McCain Institute. Is that right, ladies?
Yeah, so McCain Institute, Department of Homeland Security.
I see. Awesome. So let's just get a little bit more into what your project was. Could one of you talk a little bit more about your topic, why you chose it, what motivated it, et cetera?
Absolutely. So we focused on misogyny as it relates to radicalization. And the reason why we chose it is because there's been a lot of research done around the direct links of misogyny and other forms of extremism. And coming together, we all had a similar interest in really understanding why that is And we also felt like it was a part in the funnel of radicalization that was upstream enough that prevention methods could actually be possible. So when narrowing in on, okay, what kind of narratives or language are in this realm of misogyny, we decided to hone in on incel ideology. Incel stands for involuntary celibate. And it's this idea that a man, you're not loved or you're not worthy of love. And this usually sparks a lot of resentment and hatred towards women in general. And there's a lot of different memes, key terms, just general narratives that this group will use to describe this feeling and their beliefs around it. So we did in-depth research on what they were saying and then where they were and what kind of languages they use and locations that that they're in today. And then we thought, okay, where can we actually intercept from going further down this form of thinking that could potentially lead to violence? And that's when we came up with Diverting Hate. So we created a database of key terms that we could use to target this audience, specifically on Twitter. That's where we ran the campaign, and surface an ad that would direct them towards resiliency building tactics. So there's kind of two parts to our idea. The first would keep them inside the Twitter product and send them to other profiles within Twitter that are known to be healthier. So healthy male influencers that are talking about building quality, healthy relationships, community groups, and mental health profiles and tools. And then the other piece of this, to really prove out the efficacy of our ideas, we actually built a resource hub that we ran an ad campaign using these key terms to direct them towards this hub. And this hub has a select group of community groups that we've vetted to be known for healthy communications and a variety of different men who use these groups. And then also telemental health options, so they can explore different ways of engaging with talk therapy. And then last, we also developed some content that we use to direct to advertise our audience towards this resource hub. And the different topics we used in that content were 10 ways to find help today, or 6 community groups you could consider joining. And we were able to see that even though this audience hasn't engaged with this type of content before, we actually had a rather promising click-through rate to our site. And that's where kind of the promise of Diverting Hate really lies, is that there is this potential to divert this group away from dangerous misogynistic narratives and towards resiliency building tactics.
Excellent. Thanks for that recap. So is this resource that you mentioned a couple of times, or this hub, is that the divertinghate.org website?
Yes, it
Okay.
currently is divertinghate.org.
Mm-hmm.
As we strategize, one of our big things moving forward is actually separating out our mission and who we are from the resource hub. Together, they lie together right now. So if you go to divertinghate.org, you can kind of see it as one cohesive thing. But where we think we're going to have real success is by rebranding that hub to better meet our audience and speak more directly to men's health and less about our tactics or hateful algorithms, and then let divertinghate.org be a spot where we can talk about our mission and our vision and our research and build partnerships. So as for next steps, that's kind of one of our biggest strategic moves we're making, is we're going to separate out the hub and who we are a little bit more. And also safety concerns as well. When you're in this space, you don't necessarily want the two to be so intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of our biggest next steps. But yes, if you visit today, you can kind of see the bigger picture and the skeleton of this idea.
Great. And so we'll have a link to that in the show notes, obviously, plus a link to a YouTube video, which was your presentation. your contest winning presentation with the Invent to Prevent contest. So we'll have that in the show notes as well. Could I maybe just rewind just a little bit and go back to the Incel challenge? As you guys were preparing for this, did you do any kind of historical look back at incel related phenomenon? Like how far back does it go, and what has been, let's just say, the history over the last 20 years or longer? Do you have any kind of like a historical reference point of where how the movement or got to where it is today? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, sure. So incel ideology is relatively new, as it really just fostered itself on platforms like Reddit and YouTube, Twitter even as well. However, the link to misogyny and radicalization is long known, with cases of, associated domestic violence or just general violence against women with the same men who are perpetrating larger acts of violence. But the one event that really, I think, sparked incel ideology as something that has become known as a threat of targeted violence was the Santa Barbara shooting and Isla Vista, I believe, in 2000, I want to say 2016.
Okay.
I'll need to fact check that one for sure.
Okay.
But there was a shooting in Isla Vista on the Santa Barbara at a Santa Barbara sorority, so UC Santa Barbara. And he posted a video to YouTube right before expressing his incel beliefs and why he was going to perpetrate this attack that resulted in fatalities. And that was kind of the first time that incel ideology became something prominent in the sphere of targeted violence. And since then, there have been several other cases of this associated with manifestos that are expressing their misogynistic beliefs in this incel ideology, that what they're doing, justifying their acts.
I see. Yeah. And we'll have a link to this in the show notes as well. I just looked it up. 2014. The Isla Vista killings, and so we'll have a link to that. Yeah. Definitely an important topic to do something to help manage this.
And if I may just jump
Courtney.
in, I think to build off what Kaitlyn was saying, I think as we're thinking about how we want to scale and where we want diverting hate to move in the future, one of those things that we're talking about now is sort of proving out this connection, this misogyny to targeted violence, radicalization pipeline that we're drawing on. And so, whether that's carrying out sort of original data analysis or network analyses, or building on the database that we've already created of a lot of this is our next task, is to build upon the research that we've already created and to hopefully have that available on not our resource hub that's going to be outward facing to our target audience, but for sort of our Diverting Hate, who we are as an organization, and have that information there. So that's sort of something that we're targeting and seeing as a next step for us as well, is proving a lot of this out and drawing those clear lines.
Yeah, great. Well, so you've obviously gotten some fantastic feedback by winning this contest. What other feedback have you gotten from external organizations?
There's a lot of excitement about the possibilities. I think one of the main pieces of feedback because when I'm looking for feedback, it's always how we can be better. And it goes back to why we're making this next strategic move to separate out the hub and our mission. But just that our landing page has potential to better address our audience, and not necessarily overtly call out what we're trying to do by disrupting these hateful algorithms, and make it more of a smoother transition into an exploration of resiliency building tactics. So that's like a key piece of feedback that we're taking, and we're running with it, and we're putting it into our strategy. And I think that was really helpful. We heard that both from some of our judges as well as professors that we've bounced this idea off with, and our fellow teammates. You know, there's 13 of us, and we're all full of really great ideas. So it's been great to kind of just digest it and see what everyone thinks we can do better, and now apply that moving forward.
If I may, do you think we could rewind just a little bit one more time? I think this is our second rewind. Could one of you talk a little bit about some of the forces at play in our society which seem to be exacerbating these kinds of problems, but you're also trying to, put together a solution which addresses this gap or something. Could one of you talk about that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So looking big picture in our society in 2022, really two of the major issues that are facing extremism today are algorithmic radicalization on social media and the lack of mental health support for men. So when I say algorithmic radicalization on social media, what we mean by that is that social media is designed to keep you engaged at all costs. So once you start engaging with a certain piece of content, you are much more likely to get served that once again. So if it's at all within the realm of hate or hate speech, you're likely to see it again and slowly shift your mindset towards those sorts of thoughts and beliefs. The second piece is the lack of mental health support for men. Men are 3.7 times more likely to commit suicide than women. They definitely are not as well supported in our society as it comes to talking about emotions and feelings and how to be expressive, and how to cope, how to build coping mechanisms that are healthy. So what we thought we could do when facing these two major issues is meet our audience where they are and utilize social media for what it's best at, which is directly targeting at a group and surfacing them a message. But our message would be diverting them away from those hateful narratives and towards mental health tools and access and communities.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Where do you guys see this going? Where do you want to take this in the next, say, 1, 3, 5 years?
That's a really great question. And I think that's something that Kaitlyn and myself and our team were workshopping right now. We just came out of a very intense competition over the course of 10 weeks, and then through the holidays and straight to a finals competition. And so there was a lot of deliverables that we had to do as it pertained to that. And now we're starting to take a step back and kind of look at this gap that we're filling or have the potential to fill, as Kaitlyn mentioned, and the impact that we want to have. And I think just to, reiterate here, Diverting Hate was certainly born out of a desire to have empathy with these groups of people, and to practice empathy. And so we are looking at right now, sort of finalizing who Diverting Hate is, what we want to do, what our direct mission is, how we want to interact with our target audience, but also we're pursuing grants and other funding opportunities. There are things that we need to do as it relates to testing our messaging on social media sites like Twitter, running those ad campaigns, building out not only Diverting Hate, our organizational website, but also this sort of outward facing resource hub, you know, on the one hand. And then on the other hand, we really want to, as I mentioned earlier, really build out this research that we have in these databases and these network analyses, and contribute to the conversation and fill what we see as a gap in this, like in this link, in drawing this link. And so we have a lot of things that we're doing at the same time. And so we're, you know, I'm really grateful that we have quite the expansive team with a lot of different expertise, and we're all tackling these things together. But we're certainly making moves, and we're really optimistic for what Diverting Hate holds, for sure.
All right. Well, excellent, ladies. You're certainly right there in the middle of a problem space that is a very live challenge for our social wellness and national security as well. So with that, I wish you and your teammates all the best. And Courtney Cano and Kaitlyn Tierney, thank you so much for being on the Cognitive Crucible.
Thanks for having
John,
us.
for having us.
The Cognitive Crucible is the only podcast dedicated to increasing interdisciplinary collaboration between information operations practitioners, scholars, and policymakers. To find out more about the Information Professionals Association, visit us at information-professionals.org. Please support our podcast by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review.